Okay, I'm in the process of setting up the live stream, so I'll be with you in a second. Okay, here we go. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm so glad you can join us today. We're continuing with our Lenten series on the 7 living words and illuminated perspective on the 7 last words of Jesus. And it's written by Unity and New Thought minister Mark Anthony Lord. And we're looking at these words metaphysically, and in doing that, we can see how they support us in our own transformation, just as Jesus transformed on Easter. The first living word was forgiveness. You know, it's been said that forgiveness is a gift we give to ourselves because it releases us from the bondage and anger and resentment. And that can only occur within the world because of our belief in duality. Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And in doing that, Jesus is speaking at the level of truth, the truth being that we are not now, nor have we ever been separate from God. So in truth, there can be no sin. There can be nothing to forgive, because how can that exist where there is only love? In the world of duality, however, we perceive right and wrong, good and bad, and so on. We know that we cannot see in others what we do not possess within ourselves. So forgiveness begins within, by forgiving ourselves first, and then extending that forgiveness to others. Forgiveness truly frees us. The second living word is now. Now, when Jesus was on the cross, there were 2 men with him, one on his right and one on his left. And in Luke 23:45, it says that Jesus said to them, today you will be with me in paradise. When we look at this metaphysically, Jesus on the cross represents now, and the 2 men, one represents the past and the other represents the future. Now, when we're in the midst of difficulties, you know, in the midst of transformation, we sometimes retreat to the past or to the future. But Jesus said to them, today you will be with me in paradise. He said today, not tomorrow, not next year, but today. Now, the word paradise is used interchangeably with kingdom of heaven. And Jesus tells us in Matthew 4:17 that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So he's telling us that paradise, or the kingdom of heaven, is available to all of us right here and now, and that it can only be experienced in the now present moment. The third living word is oneness, and we looked at this last week when Jesus was on the cross. Again, he looked down and saw his mother Mary and his disciple John. And he said, woman, behold your son. And then he looked at his disciple and said, behold your mother. Now we can see that this is an act of concern for both Mary and John, that he wanted them to care for each other as mother and son. But he wasn't saying that John should take his place. He was saying that John was him. He was pointing to the illusion of duality and the truth of oneness. Again, that we are not now and never have been separate from God. Jesus in the Course in Miracles says, heaven is not a place or a condition. It is merely an awareness of perfect oneness. Places and conditions only exist in the world. Oneness is perfection. It's love, it's bliss, it's timeless, it's changeless, it's constant. There is only one. And today we're moving on to the fourth living word, which is truth. When Jesus was on the cross, it's recorded in both Matthew 27 and Mark 15 that Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, when we first hear this, we might be confused. After all, Jesus was an enlightened being and teacher. Is it possible that he felt abandoned and ignored? Well, Jesus was a master teacher, and everything he said and did was done to help us with our own awakening, and to support us during our own personal crucifixions and resurrections. So it's not surprising that he would utter words of despair in the middle of his journey. He's speaking to all of us as we move towards our realization of our inherent godness. In life, we experience crucifixions and resurrections, and we need to remember that it's always darkest before the dawn. And that's when we're doing that deep work. It's possible that when we're doing this deep work in the middle of our journey, we may hit a wall of despair. So whether or not we feel despair, the fourth living word, truth, is inviting us to embark on a final deep cleansing of consciousness. As difficult as it may seem, this point in the journey is to be embraced and even celebrated. It's a sign that we are doing right and wonderful work. If we weren't moving through a transformation, we wouldn't be feeling anything that comes up that needs to be let go of. If we feel fearful and abandoned, it's important that we don't look at these feelings as being wrong. We need to move through these feelings with perseverance and faith that God and Spirit is within us, helping us through this. And if at any point of our journey we are not feeling fear or betrayed by God, we still need to embrace the word truth and take a deep plunge within to uncover any fears or betrayals that may be hiding, that may be lingering there, that may have been pushed down. Past betrayals by people, especially those we have loved or needed, may seem to have been dealt with, but often there are remnants of fear, despair, and anger. We need to go into the truth, be honest with ourselves, and gain new insight. We also need to name and own our fear before we can banish it. And this brings us to spiritual bypassing. Moving through our crucifixion process may be a very, very painful experience and difficult. Many times in the midst of a painful yet necessary transformation, we may try to reach for an easier option, consciously or even subconsciously, which is basically spiritual bypassing. A spiritual bypass is where we allow our ego to use the lingo and catchphrases of spiritual wellness to cover up pain, uncertainty, and fear so we can look good or feel good in the moment. It's basically denial. And examples will be like, all is well, I'm fine, all is in divine order. Now, there's nothing wrong with those statements. They're actually wonderful when used as truth statements. But when they're misused to sweep fear, anger, resentment, and shame under the rug, they become stumbling blocks to our authentic now moment. The thing is, it's because all is well in truth that each of us is free to express whatever we are truly feeling and fearing. It's in the authentic expression of these feelings that we're set free. Many people on a spiritual path can be stuck by the belief that their journey is linear and that any temporary steps backwards represents failure instead of empowered opportunities to go deeper. We've all heard 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, and there's nothing wrong with needing to feel like we're taking a step back. We have to remember, though, when we discover a deep-seated fear or an under-the-surface negative belief that we didn't realize was there, we may move into self-judgment or metaphysical malpractice by saying something like, oh, I've been doing this work for so long, how could I have missed that? That's metaphysical malpractice. That's judgment. It's more empowering to express gratitude for the realization and awareness that we still have work to do and embrace that work rather than judge ourselves for it. Stuff will come up when we're ready to deal with it. How many times are we on our journey and we think everything's fine, and then all of a sudden we have this thought from years ago, and I'm like, where did that come from? It's because it's ready to be released. It's ready to be dealt with. Now, the underlying intention of keeping all thoughts positive is good, but it's also a practice that can only be successfully accomplished and maintained after years of spiritual growth and practice. In the meantime, our best choice is to be real, to share what is really going on inside of us with those who know the truth for us and about us, to be honest with people who can support us on our path because they're on a similar path. They're also looking for spiritual development. The deeper dives into the dark despair with a flashlight of God turned on bright are the most powerful and transforming inner journeys we can take. When we look at that stuff with the help of spirit, it allows us to go deep, feel what we need to feel, and release it. The author, Mark Anthony Lord, uses an analogy to describe spiritual bypassing. He says, imagine you have a great old house with good structural integrity and a sturdy foundation, but the inside needs to be completely renovated. You choose, though, to only fix one room, the living room. After months of hard work, the living room is done, and it looks like it's something out of a House Beautiful magazine. Then you have your friends over, but you confine them to that one room because you don't want them to see the horrible conditions the other rooms are in. And not only that, but you struggle with this big secret that no one can know about because you feel shame about it. The thing is, if you had just told them what was true, they would have seen that you already began on this wonderful transformation and you're still working on it. We're all works in progress, and just like that house, in order to continue on our journey of transformation, we need to be honest and not skip or hide from emotions or feelings that we don't want to face. If we spiritually bypass, we'll remain stuck. The journey of the 7 living words is all about deep transformation. The 4th living word, truth, is about being deeply real. Really real and willing to face the reality of our difficult feelings as well as grief. When grief is hidden and unexpressed, it blocks our growth. Any grief that we experience is here for a reason, to be expressed. Now, some of us have buried grief from childhood wounds or from traumas that weren't fully experienced and healed. Our false beliefs separate us from our true source of love and the joyous, peaceful feeling of knowing we are one with the goodness of life. In the feeling of separation, the pain is feeling alone, abandoned, and yes, forsaken. Acknowledging and moving through grief is part of the healing process. Grief is of God in the sense that when used appropriately and moved through it, it returns us to the experience of our inherent wholeness, the experience of oneness. Now, grief cannot be relieved of quickly. It calls us inward to stop, rest, feel, heal, and cry. But our society is uncomfortable with grief. And since so many don't know what to do when someone they care about is grieving, they ignore it or try to move away from it. When I was 23, my first child, a girl, was stillborn. I was inconsolable. And every time I saw an infant, I would cry. My ex-husband, as well as our friends, were not comfortable around grief, and they did everything they could to avoid it and not talk about it. A couple of months after I gave birth, my ex-husband and I were out at an event, and there was a woman there with a newborn that was only a couple of weeks old. I started to cry. My ex-husband turned to me and said, "That one lived. Are you going to cry every time you see one that lived?" I felt like someone had slapped me in the face. It wasn't his intention to be mean, but it felt mean. He grew up in a home where you did not express or feel your emotions. And he just did what he knew how to do. He didn't know how to deal with it at the time, so he had to shut it down. And the message I got was that it was unacceptable to grieve, especially in public. So what did I do? I spiritually bypassed it and pushed it down. The grief continued, I just didn't show it. I mourned silently and internally. And it wasn't until the birth of my son 2 years later that I started to feel some relief. His birth allowed me to grieve as much as I needed to grieve. So there was grief and there was joy in that experience. Grief is important. It's part of our life experience. We can ignore it and pretend it's not there, but grief will always have its final say until it has nothing left to say. Again, Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And he's telling us that on this journey, there will be times during this transformation process where we feel abandoned. We will experience anger, resentment, sadness, and grief. Jesus knew the absolute truth being that he was one with the Father. And that's what he taught us, that we are also one with the Father, God, divine creator, higher power, divine mind, the absolute, or whatever name you're comfortable using. We may struggle and experience difficulties, but truth is truth and principle is principle. Spiritual principles stand solid and strong, allowing us to do whatever is needed and feel whatever we need to feel on our journey towards transformation and resurrection. Truth is truth. We are not now, nor have we ever been separate from God. We may experience it differently in the world, but truth is truth. So with that, I invite you to quote, I'm showing a video from Unity, and it's a meditation on oneness with God. So I invite you to relax, even with your eyes open, as I share this meditation video with you.
We begin with the knowledge of the nature of God. God is infinite peace, infinite wisdom, infinite love, and infinite life. All that God is, we can realize as the truth within us. We begin in celebration of the whole, holy power within, the Christ, our true nature. Breathing in peace. Breathing out peace. In the knowledge of God and my divine nature, I cease mental confusion. I come into swift agreement, mind and heart sure and steady. Nothing can disturb my peace of mind or my harmonious heart, for I am anchored in divine peace. With every step forward, I am faith-filled and faithful. In the knowledge of God and my divine nature, I lead my life by faith. The only evidence I need of fulfillment ahead is knowledge of my oneness with God. I faithfully place one foot in front of the other, confident and expectant. Attuned to divine life, I heal and live fully. In the knowledge of God and my divine nature, I heal limiting thoughts about life. In God, there is no limit to life. In God, there is fullness and wholeness of life. Health, well-being, vitality, and ease are mine as I attune to divine life. By the power of spiritual strength, I stand steady and ready. In the knowledge of God and my divine nature, I find spiritual strength to be an endless inner resource. In times of confusion and change, I stand strong and sure, steady and ready to bring clarity and resolution. I am spiritually strong. Centered in divine love, I am a harmonious presence. In the knowledge of God and my divine nature, I embody divine love in the presence of others. My presence broadcasts harmony. I am a voice of harmony, and I walk hand in hand with others, whether or not I share their worldview. I live in the harmony of divine love. As we close this period of prayer, we resolve to remain aware of our oneness with God that empowers us to live in a state of peace, faith, wholeness, strength, and harmony. We know
And now I invite you to go deeper and deeper into the silence and just listen. Now I invite you to bring to mind anyone who may be in need of prayer. All those on our unity prayer list, on Silent Unity, and we include ourselves, and we extend these prayers to the wider circle of the world, holding in prayer especially those who are being oppressed, anywhere where there is discord and war. We pray for the elevation of consciousness for all of humanity, so that we will see that there is only one. So that we will see that as we do to another, we do to ourselves. So that we will see that we are one humanity, governed by the same spiritual laws and truths that manifest in our lives in different ways. With truth remaining that we are one. So now I invite you to open your eyes as you bring your consciousness back into your body, back into the room where you are. And I welcome you back. And this is the time in our service where we have the opportunity to give. So I invite you to take your gifts and hold them in your hand. And if you use a credit card or the donate button or on our website or PayPal, just visualize whatever method you use to give. And see this illumined by the light that is you. Feel that light and that love infuse these gifts with eternal positivity, with the knowledge that God is our source and God consciousness is our supply. We know that as we give, we receive. And we are so grateful and blessed for this awareness. So I invite you to bless these gifts with me. And with your mics muted, divine love as me blesses and multiplies all that I choose to give and all that I am open to receive. And I am grateful. And I'd like to thank anyone who is joining us on the live stream. Feel free to leave a comment or just tell us who you are. We're so grateful that you could join us. And if you'd like to join us on Zoom, just message us on our Facebook page or at unityspiritualcenter.org.
All right, everyone. And our closing song is Leanna Crawford, Truth I'm Standing.